Hebrews chapter 9. Yes, indeed, even the former contract had just requirements for divine service, in addition to the worldly pure place. For the first tent, Exodus 25 verses 8 through 9, called the pure place, Exodus 26 verse 33, was constructed with the lampstand, Exodus 25 verses 31 through 39. The table, Exodus 25 verses 25 through 29, and the presentation biscuits, Exodus 25 verse 30. Now after the second curtain, Exodus 26 verses 31 through 33, was another tent, the inner one, called the last pure place of the pure places, Exodus 26 verse 33, which had the golden altar of incense, Exodus 30 verses 1 through 5, and the ark or chest containing the old contract, Exodus 25 verses 10 through 22, which was covered all over with gold, and in it was the golden urn that held the manna biscuit, Aaron's staff that germinated, and the tablets of the old contract. Now over it were the two cherubs, the living creature figures that are symbolic of Almighty's esteem overshadowing this shelter of mercy. But about these there is nothing in particular to say now. Now after these things had been constructed like this, the priests regularly went into the first tent, which is symbolic of this present age, as they performed their divine service. Yet into the second one, the inner one, which is symbolic of the last age, only the chief priest went, and he only, once a year, and never without blood, which he was offering on behalf of himself and the people's errors. By this, the pure Spirit is making it evident that the way, Jesus, into the last of the pure places, the last age, isn't appearing yet, while the first tent, this present age, still has a place. This is an illustration of the present time period, in which both presents and sacrifices are being offered that can't make the person offering the divine service perfect in conscience, as they only consist of foods, drinks, and diverse immersings, that is, just requirements for the flesh pressing on the people until the time period of reformation, or correction, the new contract. Yet when the Anointed One came along as the chief priest of the good things that are going to come, he went through the greater and more perfect tent, the inner one, not made by hands, that is, not of this creation, but the one of the last age, and not by means of the blood of male goats and male calves, but by means of his own blood. He entered into the last of the pure places, the last age, once for all time, having found the ransom payment of the last age. For if the blood of the male goats and bulls and the ashes of the heifer sprinkling contaminated people, could purify in such a way that the people's flesh was cleaned, how much more so will the blood of the Anointed One, who offered himself flawless to Almighty by means of his Spirit of the last age, in the last of the pure places, make your consciences clean from dead works, to be continually offering divine service to the living Almighty. For this reason also, he is the mediator of a new contract, so that, after a death had occurred for the liberation through the payment of the ransom for those who had already been called, who had stepped beyond the boundaries under the first old contract, they might obtain the promise of the inheritance of the last age. For where there is a contract, a will, it is necessary for a death to be brought in, the death of the person who made the contract, the will. For a contract, a will, is confirmed over the dead, since it doesn't have any strength while the person who made the contract, the will, is living. For this reason, neither has the first, old contract been dedicated without blood, for after every direction according to the law had been spoken by Moses to all the people, he took the blood of the male calves and the male goats, with some water, some purplish red wool, and a hyssop branch, and sprinkled both the scroll itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the contract that Almighty has directed me to make with you." Exodus 24, verse 8. Now, he also likewise sprinkled the tent and all the containers of the attending work with the blood. So according to the law, almost everything is made clean with blood, and without the shedding of blood there comes no forgiveness. So then, it was necessary on the one hand for the examples of the things in the heavens to be made clean with these, yet on the other hand, the things in the heavens themselves had to have better sacrifices than these. For the Anointed One didn't enter into pure places made by hands, which are representations of the true ones, but into heaven itself, now to appear before the face of Almighty on our behalf. Nor was it that he should offer himself often, just like the chief priest enters into the last of the pure places year after year with the blood of others. Otherwise, he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. Yet it is a fact that he is appearing once at the conclusion of the ages, the beginning of the last age, for the rejection of wrongdoing by means of his sacrifice. Now, inasmuch as it is reserved for humans to die once, and after that to face judgment, so too the Anointed One, who has been offered up once for all time to carry the wrongdoings of many, will be seen a second time, at the beginning of the last age, not to deal with wrongdoing again, but to give salvation from destruction to those who are continually waiting for him. Hebrews chapter 10. For since the law has only a shadow of the good things that are going to come, and not the very image of these acts, it can never by the same sacrifices which they continually offer year after year make those who approach perfect for all time. Otherwise, wouldn't they have stopped offering them? Because those who offer the divine service, after they had once been made clean, would no longer have any wrongdoings on their conscience? But in those sacrifices there was a reminder of wrongdoings year after year, because it is impossible for the blood of bulls and male goats to remove wrongdoings. For this reason, when he entered into the world, he said, "You didn't want sacrifice and offering, yet you have prepared a body for me. You weren't delighted with burnt offerings and sacrifices for wrongdoing." Then I said, notice, I am arriving, as it has been written about me in the summary of the scroll, to do what you want, Almighty. Musical Composition 40, verses 6 through 8. After he said the above, you didn't want and weren't delighted with sacrifices and offerings, and burnt offerings and sacrifices for wrongdoing, which are offered according to the law. He then declared, notice, I am arriving to do what you want. He was doing away with the first, that is, sacrifices, etc., so that he might establish the second, that is, what Almighty really wants. It was by him doing what was wanted that we are going to be purified by means of the offering of the body of Jesus, the Anointed One, once for all time. So on the one hand, every priest stands day after day, serving and attending, and offering over and over again the same sacrifices that can never take away wrongdoings from us. Yet on the other hand, this one, after offering one sacrifice for wrongdoings, sat down for all time at the right hand of Almighty, waiting for then on until his enemies are placed under his feet like a footstool. Musical Composition 110, verse 1. For with one offering he is perfecting for all time those who are going to be purified. Now the pure Spirit is also testifying to us, for after declaring, "This is the new contract that I will make with them after those days," says the Master. "I'm going to put my laws upon their hearts, and I will inscribe them upon their minds." Jeremiah 31, verse 33. Then it was declared, "And by no means will I remember their wrongdoings and their lawlessnesses any longer." Jeremiah 31, verse 34. Now where there is forgiveness of these things, there is no longer any offering for wrongdoing. So then, brothers and sisters, since we have boldness to enter into the last of the pure places through the blood of Jesus, by a recently slaughtered and yet living way that he has dedicated for us as the way, through the curtain, into the last of the pure places, or the last age, that is, through his flesh. And since we have a great priest over Almighty's household, we should be continually approaching with true hearts, in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled clean from a wicked conscience. Exodus 29, verse 21. And our bodies bathed in clean water. Exodus 29, verse 4. We should be continually holding to the acknowledgement that we had in our hope, as our course without wavering, for the one who has promised is trustworthy. And we should be continually considering how to incite one another to love and ideal acts. So we should be never forsaking the gathering of ourselves together for love feasts. Note: love feasts are group suppers that also include the Master's Supper, teaching, singing, and praying, as some are accustomed to doing. Rather, we should be continually encouraging one another, and so much more so, as you observe the day of the last age drawing near. For if we are voluntarily doing things that are wrong, after we have obtained the full knowledge of the truth, there is no longer a sacrifice left over for the things that we have done that are wrong, but only a certain fearful waiting for the judgment and the fire's enthusiasm that is going to eat those who are hostile, that is, destroy them in the fire of the second death. Revelation 20, verses 14 through 15. Whoever rejected the law of Moses died without sympathy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse revenge do you suppose a person will be considered worthy of who has trampled on the Son of Almighty, who has thought of the blood of the new contract, by which he had purification as contaminated, and who has treated the favor-giving Spirit with outrage? For we are acquainted with the one who said, "The giving out of justice belongs to me. I will repay." Deuteronomy 32, verse 35. Then again, the Master will judge his people. Deuteronomy 32, verse 36. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living Almighty. Now you must be continually remembering your former days, when after you had been enlightened, you endured a great competition with much suffering. On the one hand, you were continually being made a public spectacle, both with reproaches and oppressions. Yet on the other hand, You became partners with those who are continually being treated like this, for you even sympathized with those who were prisoners, and anticipated joyfully the forcible taking of your possessions, knowing that you have for yourselves a better and permanent property. So then, you must not throw away your boldness, which has a great reward. For you are going to continually need endurance, so that you might do what Almighty wants and retrieve what was promised. For after a very little bit longer, the one who is to come will arrive, and won't delay. Now the person who is just and right before me must be continually living on the basis of faith, and if he shrinks back, my sentient being isn't going to be delighted with him. Habakkuk 2 verses 3 through 4. Yet we don't belong to those who shrink back into destruction in the coming fire of the second death, but rather we belong to those who have faith for the purchasing of their sentient beings, for life in the last age. Hebrews chapter 11. Now faith is the title deed to the things that are continually being hoped for, a conviction about acts that aren't being observed. For by it our older ones received a good testimony. By faith we are comprehending that the ages have been prepared by Almighty's declaration, so that what is being observed hasn't come into being out of the things that are apparent to us. By faith, Abel offered to Almighty a better sacrifice than Cain, through which he received testimony that he was just and right, since Almighty testified about his, Abel's, presence. Genesis 4 verse 4. So by means of faith, though he has died, he is still speaking. By faith, Enoch was transferred to the beginning of the last age, so that he wasn't acquainted with death, and he wasn't found because Almighty had transferred him. Genesis 5 verse 24. For before the transfer, he had received testimony that he was very pleasing to Almighty. Now, apart from faith, it is impossible to be very pleasing to Almighty, for whoever comes to Almighty has to believe that he exists, and that he is going to give rewards, or life in the last age, to those who are continually seeking him out. By faith, Noah, when he was given notice by Almighty about things that couldn't yet be observed, Genesis 6 verses 13 through 22, was reverent and constructed an ark for the salvation of his household from death in the flood. By means of faith he condemned the world, and became an heir of the rightness and justness before Almighty, that is according to faith. By faith Abraham, when he was called, Genesis 12 verses 1 through 4, obeyed by going out to a place that he was going to obtain as an inheritance, and he went out in spite of having no expertise as to where he was going. By faith he was a foreigner in the land of promise, as in an alien land, Genesis 12 verse 8, and 13 verses 3 and 18, making a home in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who were fellow heirs of the same promise, for he was waiting for the city that has solid foundations, the Jerusalem of the last age, Hebrews 12 verse 12, and Revelation 21 verses 10 through 14, whose architect and craftsman is Almighty. By faith even Sarah herself obtained power for the ejection of a seed into her uterus, even though she was beyond the time period of her maximum development, since she thought the one who had made the promise about her, Genesis 17 verse 19, was trustworthy. For this reason also, from one man, Abraham, on him already as good as dead, there were born people in a quantity like the stars of the sky, and like the sand beside the seashore that can't be numbered. These all died in faith, without retrieving the things promised. But they did notice them a distance ahead, and wanted to hug them. And so they acknowledged that they were strangers and visitors on the earth. For those who say such things are disclosing that they are seeking for a country of their own, the one belonging to their father. Now, if they kept remembering the one from which they went out, they kept having an occasion to go back. Yet as it is, they are continually craving for a better one, that is, the one from the heavens. For this reason Almighty isn't ashamed to be called their Almighty, for He has made a city ready for them. By faith Abraham, while he was being tested, offered up Isaac. Genesis 22 verses 1 through 10. And he who had received the promises was offering up his only son. It was he to whom it was spoken, "It is through Isaac that a person will be called your seed," or descendant. Genesis 21 verse 12. He regarded Almighty able even to wake up people from among the dead. And so, from the dead, in an illustration, He also did retrieve him. By faith Isaac also blessed Jacob and Esau concerning the things that were going to come. Genesis 27 verses 27 through 40. By faith Jacob, as he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph. Genesis 48 verses 1 through 22. And worshipped, leaning on the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, as he was completing his life, remembered about the exodus of the sons of Israel, and gave directions about his bones. Genesis 50 verses 24 through 25. By faith Moses, after he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents. Exodus 2 verse 2. Because they noticed he was a handsome little boy, and they weren't afraid of the king's advocation. By faith Moses, when he grew up, disowned the term son of Pharaoh's daughter, Exodus 2 verse 10, and preferred instead to be treated badly together with the people of Almighty, rather than to have the temporary enjoyment that results from doing things that are wrong. He thought the reproach endured for the Anointed One to be greater riches than the treasures of Egypt. For he kept his eyes looking ahead to the reward. By faith he left Egypt, Exodus 2 verse 15, because he wasn't afraid of the rage of the king, for he was mighty as though he were actually seeing the one who was invisible. By faith he caused the Passover and the pouring of blood upon the doorposts, Exodus 12 verses 21 through 27, so that the exterminator of the firstborn children might not come into contact with them. By faith they crossed through the Red Sea like it was dry land, Exodus 14 verses 22 through 29. But when the Egyptians attempted it, they were swallowed up. By faith the walls of Jericho fell, Joshua 6 verse 20, after they had been surrounded for 7 days. By faith Rahab, the woman who had non-marital sexual intercourse, wasn't destroyed with those who were unpersuaded, because she had welcomed the spies in peace. Joshua 2 verses 1 through 21. Now what more shall I say? For there won't be enough time for me to relate about Gideon, Judges 6 through 8, Barak, Judges 4 through 5, Samson, Judges 13 through 16, Jephthah, Judges 11 through 12, and about David, 1 Samuel 17, Samuel, 1 Samuel 7, and the prophets. By means of faith, they subdued kingdoms, did work that was right and just, encountered promises, shut the mouths of lions, extinguished the power of fire, ran away from the edge of the sword, were made powerful from out of weakness or sickness, became strong in battle, and routed the protected camps of aliens. Women obtained back their dead by resurrection, yet other people were beaten and didn't anticipate their liberation, since the price was the denial of their faith, so that they might encounter a better resurrection. Yet others got the test of mockings and afflictions with lashes, and yes, even the test of prison restraints and jail. They were stoned, they were sawed in half, they were tested or tortured to death. They were put to death, murdered by the sword. They wandered around in sheepskins and goatskins, being continually needy, continually oppressed, continually treated badly. People of whom the world wasn't worthy. Continually made to stray about in wastelands, mountains, caves, and holes in the earth. Now these all, although they had received a good testimony because of their faith, haven't yet retrieved what was promised, because Almighty had something better in sight for us, so that without us they shouldn't be made perfect. Hebrews chapter 12. So therefore, since we also definitely have so many witnesses encircling us like a cloud, we should take off everything that weighs us down, and the wrong that easily entangles our feet, especially lack of faith, and be continually racing in the contest that is lying before us with endurance, continually looking ahead to Jesus, the originator and completer of our faith. He, instead of the joy that was lying before him, endured a stake, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of Almighty. For you must take into account the one who has endured such contradiction by those who have done things wrong against him, so that you might not falter, fainting in your sentient beings. You haven't yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood in your struggle against wrongdoing, and you have let escape your notice the encouragement that is talking with you as with sons. My son, you must stop regarding lightly the Master's discipline, and you must stop fainting when you are exposed by him. For the Master disciplines the person whom he loves, and he afflicts with lashes every son whom he accepts. Proverbs 3 verses 11 through 12. What you must be continually enduring is for your discipline. Almighty brings it to you as to sons, meaning those like him. Because what son is there whom his father doesn't discipline? Yet if you are without discipline, in which all sons share, then you are bastards and not sons. Furthermore, on the one hand, we were having the fathers of our flesh as discipliners, and we were showing them respect. So on the other hand, shall we not much more so be subservient to the Father of our spirits and live? For on the one hand, these were disciplining us for a few days, as it seemed best to them. Yet, on the other hand, he disciplines us for our improvement, so that we might receive a share of his purity. On the one hand, all discipline at the time seems not to be joyful, but sorrowful. Yet on the other hand, it later pays back the peaceful fruit of being right and just to those who have been trained by it. For this reason you must reinvigorate your hands that have become limp, and your knees that have become paralyzed. You must put your feet in the firm wheel tracks, so that the person with the lame leg might not have it become twisted, but rather healed. You must be continually pursuing peace with everybody, and purity, without which no one will see the Master. You must be continually taking care as caretakers, so that no one is falling behind and in need of Almighty's favor, so that a root of bitterness doesn't sprout up and crowd in on you, and by it many others become defiled, and so that there is no person having non-marital sexual intercourse, or person being impure like Esau, who gave away his birthright as a payment for one feeding. For you must be aware that even afterwards, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was disapproved, for he found no place or chance for a change in thoughts and feelings, even though he sought it out with tears. For you haven't been approaching towards the mountain, Mount Sinai, burning with fire that can be felt, and towards murkiness, gloom, a tornado, Deuteronomy 4 verse 11, the reverberating sound of a trumpet, Exodus 19 verse 16, and a voice giving declarations, Deuteronomy 4 verse 12, that those who heard refused to have any further word added, Exodus 20 verse 19, for they couldn't carry out the assignment. If even a beast comes in contact with the mountain, it must be stoned. Exodus 19 verses 12 through 13. Now so fearful was the spectacle that Moses said, I am terrified and trembling. Deuteronomy 9 verse 19. Rather, you have been approaching towards Mount Zion, and towards the city of the living Almighty, that is, towards the Jerusalem from the heavens, and the many thousands of messengers, towards the festival's public convocation, the harvest feast, Pentecost, the 50th day festival, and the group of firstborn called ones who have been registered in the heavens, towards Almighty, the judge of all, and the spirits of the just ones who are being made perfect, and towards Jesus, the mediator of a fresh, new contract, and the sprinkled blood that has spoken a better message than even Abel's offering did. You must be continually looking out, so that you don't refuse the one who is speaking to you. For if those, Hebrews 12 verse 19, didn't escape when they refused the one who was giving notice to them on earth at Mount Sinai, much less shall we escape who turn from the one who is giving notice to us from the heavens. His voice then shook the earth, Exodus 19 verse 18, and Judges 5 verse 4. But now he has promised, saying, once more I will cause a quake, not only of the earth, but also of heaven. Haggai 2 verse 6. Now this once more makes evident the transferal away of the things that are going to be shaken, like things that have been made, when broken, are thrown away, so that those things that can't be shaken might stay. For this reason, since we are going to obtain an unshakable kingdom, we should be continually thankful and be continually offering divine service in a way that is very pleasing to Almighty, with reverence and awe. For our Almighty is also a consuming fire. This is symbolic of the destroying fire of the second death. Revelation 20 verses 14 through 15. Hebrews chapter 13. Brotherly fondness must be continually staying. You must stop forgetting to treat strangers warmly as guests, for by this treatment of strangers, Some have given lodging to messengers, even though it escaped their notice. You must be continually remembering the prisoners, as though you were in prison together with them, and those who are being treated badly, as though you yourselves are also in their bodies. Marriage must be honored by everyone, and the marriage bed undefiled, for Almighty will judge those who have non-marital and extramarital sexual intercourse. Fondness for money must stop being your manner. You must be continually considering the things that you presently have to be sufficient, for he has declared, "By no means shall I let go of you, nor by any means shall I forsake you." Deuteronomy 31 verse 6. Therefore, we can have the courage to say, "The Master is my helper. I won't be afraid of what a human will do to me." Musical Composition 118 verse 6. You must be continually remembering your leaders who spoke Almighty's word to you, and you must be continually contemplating the results of your behavior, and be continually imitating their faith. Jesus, the Anointed One, is the same yesterday, today, and for the remaining ages, the present age and the last age. You must stop being carried away by varied and strange teachings, for it is ideal for the heart to be continually made firm by favor, not with special foods, from which those who walk in accordance with them have received no benefit. Hebrews 9:10. We have an altar, from which those who offer divine service in the tent, though still in Judaism, have no right to eat, for the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the last of the pure places by the chief priest for wrongdoing are burned up outside the protected camp. For this reason also, Jesus suffered outside the gate, so that he might purify people through his own blood. So then, we should now be going out to him outside the protected camp, leaving Judaism, carrying his reproach, for we don't have a permanent city here. Rather, we are continually seeking for the one that is going to come, on the new third earth of the last age. Revelation 21 verse 1 through chapter 22 verse 2. So then, through him we should be continually offering up a sacrifice of praise to Almighty at all times, that is, the fruit of our lips, which are continually acknowledging his name, Jesus. Now you must never forget to be doing good and sharing, for with such sacrifices Almighty is very pleased. You must be continually persuaded by your leaders, and must be continually deferring to them, for they are continually being vigilant on behalf of your sentient beings, as ones who will have to pay back an account. You must be letting them, so that they might be continually doing this with joy, and not with groaning, since that wouldn't be to your advantage. You must be continually praying for us, for we are persuaded that we have an ideal conscience, since we are wanting to behave ideally in everything. Now I am encouraging you to do this abundantly more, so that I might be restored to you more quickly. Now may the Almighty of peace, who brought up from among the dead the great shepherd of the sheep, our Master Jesus, through the blood of the contract of the last age, prepare you in every good thing to do what he wants, producing in us what is very pleasing in his sight, through Jesus, the Anointed One. And may he be esteemed for the remaining ages, the present age and the last age of the ages. Let it be true. Yet I'm encouraging you, brothers and sisters. You must be tolerant of the word of encouragement, for I have written this letter to you as just bits and pieces. You must know that our brother Timothy has been released, with whom I will see you, if he comes very shortly. Hug for me all your leaders, and all the pure ones. Those from Italy are wanting to hug you. May favor be with all of you.